years, and I keep seeing him during his visits to the Theosophical Society, when he comes to give a public lecture during the convention, or while taking classes during the School of Wisdom sessions. A gentle but a towering personality. When I asked him how he became a Buddhist and where his spiritual journey began, he replied that he was pursuing his search on Hinduism in 1972. The transcendental meditation and Kriya Yoga, and was traveling from ashram to ashram in India, right from Rishikesh to Kanyakumari between 1972 to 74. While during one of his train travel, he met a Buddhist monk who gave Olande Ananda some addresses of temples besides a meditation center, Kanduboda in Sri Lanka. By practicing Vipassana there, Olande Ananda got convinced that Buddhist meditation was the best for him, and since he liked the Buddhist philosophy of free thinking, he became a Buddhist. He became a monk on the 25th September 1975. His guru, who ordained Ananda, said initially that he would not ordain him unless his parents gave a written permission. So when Ananda wrote to his father's reply was, if nobody is forcing you, if this is your own decision, and if you think that by being a monk you would be happy, please go ahead. You have our blessings. In 1981, one of the greatest philosophers of all times, J. Krishnamurti, had come to the Theosophical Society for giving a series of lectures, nodded his approval on Ananda becoming a Buddhist monk to Ananda's parents. Ananda had earlier joined the Theosophical Society in 1976 to be able to hear J. Krishnamurti on a yearly basis. Venerable Olande Ananda runs a meditation center near Colombo called Pagoda Meditation Center, and his biodata reads as, born in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, January 1948. Studied economic sociology at the University of Amsterdam, Holland. Ordained in Sri Lanka on the 21st of September 1975 at Pagoda, Nugegoda. Practiced meditation as Kanduboda Meditation Center, 1975 and 1976. Higher ordination received on 13th August 1977 at Sapugola, Ulaparanganama, Sri Lanka. Stayed at Sri Vidya Vijaya Aramaya, Pagoda from 1975 onwards. 1979 to 1984, he was a resident teacher at Rock Hill International Meditation Center near Kandy, Sri Lanka. 1982 to now, he is the Buddhist delegate to Interreligious Living Dialogue held in Germany, Sri Lanka, India, Bali, Japan, Pakistan, France, etc. In 1984, Rains retreat at Thames Buddhist Temple, London. In 1985 to 1987, abbot of Kotawa Rainforest Hermitage near Gal, Sri Lanka. 1988, Rains retreat at Berlin Buddhist Temple. 1989 to 90, Vipassana meditation retreats held in South Africa. 91 to 96, conducted yearly meditation sessions in Ladakh, Himalayas. 93 and 95, conducted meditation seminars at Borobudur, Indonesia around Vesak Festival. Since 1997, connected to and resident teacher at Pagoda Van Han, Vietnamese temple in Holland. From 1993 to 2000, chairman of the non-Chinese speaking coordinating committee of Buddhist Light International Association. Member of INEB, International Network of Engaged Buddhists, and INEB Netherlands. Member of the Network of Western Buddhist Teachers Conference. Member of the Advisory Board of Mandala Project of Tibet House, New Delhi, India. Teaching meditation around Europe, in Holland, Germany, France, etc., and Australia. Since 1997, resident meditation teacher at Pagoda Meditation Center, Pagoda, Nugegoda, Sri Lanka. Ananda has visited the Dalai Lama on several occasions. In the year 1993 at Dharamshala, in the year 2000 in California, in the year 2003 in India, and in the year 2018 in Holland. On today's topic, mindfulness, it is a type of meditation in which you focus on being intensely aware of what you are sensing and feeling in the moment without interpretation or judgment. Most of us, most of the time, have our bodies in one place, thoughts rising out of the mind in the other. Most of the time, we are operating on an autopilot mode. To bring the body and the mind together to the present moment is awareness of being in the here and now, or being in mindfulness. Venerable Olande Ananda would explain what is mindfulness and how mindfulness could actually improve your physical health, relieve anxiety and stress, lower blood pressure, reduce chronic pain and improve sleep, enhance self-awareness and promote emotional health, self-control, objectivity, equanimity, promote greater well-being, and most important of all, enables you to be in the present. Olande Ananda has given talks in many places around the world, including the one at WHO in Geneva on many spiritual topics. His talks are deep, and I request viewers to listen intently. I request Venerable Olande Ananda to take over from now.
Well, thank you very much, Ram Kumar, and welcome to this talk to all those, let's say, the alumni of the Annamalai University Engineering and Technology faculty and the Association of the Alumni, Vanakkam, around the world. And well, I'm very happy and honored also and pleased to be able to give this talk at the invitation of Ram Kumar, who became a friend of mine through our association at the Theosophical Society. And today also I'm very happy to know that several people in the international headquarters of the Theosophical Society in Adyar, Chennai, are also listening in to this talk. In the first place, the international president, Tim Boyd. Welcome, Tim. And also a number of others in the international group of members of the board of the Theosophical Society. Welcome very much. So, the topic being mindfulness. And now, the first question which might come up, since I'm a Buddhist monk, I might as well ask this, since some people might wonder, what does mindfulness have to do with Buddhism or the Buddha? Well, I would say everything, because the practice of mindfulness is one of the core center pieces of the teachings of the Buddha. Even though nowadays, in some teachings of especially Western teachers of mindfulness, and even also from India, the word mindfulness is used, or the word vipassana, insight, for a type of meditation which uses mindfulness, leading to insight, such as Goenka's centers in India and around the world, about 300 or more centers. There in the beginning, which is in the 1970s, when Goenka started teaching, he avoided the name Buddha for his teaching of mindfulness, of vipassana. And why did he do that? Well, later on, he himself said that if he would say this is Buddhist meditation, some people belonging to other religions might not come for this meditation because they think it belongs to a different religion. However, mindfulness is not a religion, although it was taught by the Buddha in the teachings called Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the development of sati, mindfulness, or smriti in Sanskrit. So mindfulness or sati, Satipatthana Sutta, the teaching on the development of mindfulness. Now it's more than 2,600 years old, but it has experienced a revival in this 19th and more the 20th centuries. Before that, people in general, including the Buddhists mostly, did not realize that this is something that anybody, lay people, monks, nuns, men, women, and also non-Buddhists can actually practice. It is non-dogmatic. It doesn't belong to any particular lifestyle or any kind of religion. It doesn't have any dogma. So that is one thing which I like very much about Buddha's teachings. He said that when you read something which other people have written, and if the majority of people believe in that writing, you don't need to accept it. Or if the Buddha himself says something, you don't have to accept it because he said it, but you have to look for yourself, investigate the truth of it, and if you find it is not against reason, it is reasonable, it's good for yourself and for others, then you can accept it, which means a perfect fit with my background from, well, free thinker family and humanists. So I find in that teaching of the Buddha, the core of the teachings which lead to insight and wisdom and freedom from suffering. That's the main thing. Who wants to suffer? Nobody likes to suffer. But not everybody knows how to get out of suffering. So if you look at, for instance, the Four Noble Truths, which starts with that birth is, well, suffering, and then growing up is suffering, getting old is suffering, getting sick is suffering, and dying is suffering, and in the meantime, not to get what you want and to get what you don't want is also suffering. Now, unfortunately, in English language, suffering means really suffering, suffering with a long face and wrinkles in your forehead. But that word which the Buddha used was actually dukkha. And in his Four Noble Truths, that first noble truth which I just mentioned, if we replace that word of suffering with unsatisfactoriness, we come very close to the original meaning. And that means that anything in this world from birth till death actually is never 100% perfect. It is incomplete, and it cannot lead to a complete freedom from unsatisfactoriness in itself. You need something for that, namely the causes of this dukkha, which is not to see the things as they really are. That means living in moha or delusion. That is the main reason. So we have an illusion or a delusion, and we cling to things which we should not cling to, and therefore we are caught in suffering or unsatisfactoriness because of our own ignorance. Now, there is an example of how people in Asia catch monkeys. Not everywhere, but in a certain place, they were catching monkeys by using a coconut, and then they would have a hole in that coconut just big enough for a smallish monkey to put his hand through. And inside that coconut, they would put something very sweet, which smells in the whole area, very sweet, which the monkey liked. And so the monkey comes close to the coconut, but the coconut was tied with a rope to a tree. And then the monkey puts his hand in there and wants to take out that sweet. But as he put his hand like this, and then put the sweet in there, and then his hand became a fist, he was trying to get out of that coconut, but found that he could not pull out his arm. He was caught. He was caught because of his own ignorance. If the poor monkey would have known that just by letting go of the clinging, he could free himself, he would have been a free monkey. So perhaps the monkey didn't have enough brains to realize that, but we as human beings can actually realize that we are creating our own suffering or unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, by clinging to things which are actually changing all the time. If we don't see that, then we hope perhaps that maybe my mind is changing, my body is also changing, yes, and my feelings, yeah, they're also changing. But still, we hope there is something unchanging. So maybe we will say, perhaps my soul is unchanging. And then we cling to that concept that my soul is unchanging. And we think that that will be the happiness forever. But still, if we cling to those wrong ideas that my body is permanent, my feelings are permanent, and my mind is permanent, and my consciousness is permanent, then we are actually creating the ground or the causes of major problems in our life. If we are able to start to see the things as they really are, now, not to see means we have a delusion. One thing is that we believe that things are permanent, whereas they are not. The second delusion is we think that things are able to give us permanent happiness, which they can't. Because even the happiness in the worldly sense, it is not lasting forever, and therefore it changes to something else, and we cannot take it with us. So therefore, it is a cause of unhappiness if we think that things are permanent. So in that way, we project permanence onto things which are not permanent. They are not permanent, actually. They're changing all the time. So, and then, yeah, one of the difficult things is to see that nothing really belongs to me in reality. Of course, we cannot say that this is not my body, this is not my mind, and this is not my wife, or this is not my house, or this is not my bank account, for instance. Relatively speaking, all that belongs to you. But when you really look at it more deeply, then you start wondering, well, is it really true forever? Well, of course, if you just think about it for a few seconds, then you see that nothing of all these things can be taken with you into the grave or to the cremation or whatever you want to do with the body. It's not permanent, and it's not really me, mine, and my own. If it was me, mine, or my own, I should be able to keep it exactly the way that I want, like a 23-year-old youth or something like that, beautiful and strong. But as everybody knows, the fact is that our body is changing all the time and becoming old and frail, etc. So it's not to become pessimistic, but it is more to become realistic. And if we are realistic, then the suffering or the conflict which arises between what is and what you want, that is actually where the conflict and the suffering comes. You want one thing, but the fact is different. So if that clashes, then you experience problems and unsatisfactoriness and suffering, dukkha. So if one is able to live with the things as they really are in their changing nature, then a lot of our problems will already be gone. So what the Buddha taught about mindfulness, actually, in the Mindfulness Sutta or Sutra, or the discourse on sati, smrti, or mindfulness, is to be mindful of your body, called kaya anusati bhavana. So to develop that mindfulness on the body, to know that you're sitting, to know that you are standing, to know that you're walking, when you're walking, of course, and to know that you're lying down, or whatever you may be doing, swimming or jumping or whatever you do with the body, to know what the body is doing. It's mostly one of those four major things, but could be anything. Bicycling, maybe bungee jumping in some places in the world. And if you are aware of what you're doing, then you are aware of your body. But then, of course, there are also other things that one can be aware of in the body. For instance, whether you are feeling hot or cold, or whether you are, let's say, heavy or light, all these things can be aware of. So not only the body, but also the feelings, the sensations in the body. If you are aware of that, that is called Vedana Anusati, the mindfulness of Vedana or feelings. There also, if you're not aware of it, then you just go what is called without any awareness through life, and you do experience this, that, or the other, but you're not really aware of it. But if you practice mindfulness, and sometimes you're aware of what is called dukkha vedana, the unpleasant feelings, or sappa vedana, the happy feelings. And you see that these feelings are what you call changing, and also one after the other taking over its place, and they're never the same. And they're also not really me, mine, or my own, because I cannot control them. Then you can sort of either enjoy them, or you can not like them. But the more you enjoy and cling, or not like and hate those bad feelings, the more you get entangled in them. So what the Buddha taught is, look at these feelings and develop what is called upeksha, or upekha, equanimity, even-mindedness towards them. Then you can let these feelings come and let them go. Not to get clinging to the pleasant, not to dislike the unpleasant, and not to identify too much with these feelings, because they're changing anyway, all the time. So then, if you can be aware of those things in daily life also, we can, how do you say, distinguish between the formal practice of meditation, when you sit down and you're going to, observe your body and the feelings and the mind also. We haven't dealt with that yet. But if you are doing that in a formal way, that is a kind of meditation. And some people think that is all to meditation. But meditation is not only sitting, you can practice it standing also, or walking, or lying down. Still, that would be a formal practice. But you can also be aware in daily life. Maybe sometimes a little bit difficult, because in the daily life, especially the modern daily life, things are going at a fast pace, and we cannot be aware of everything in detail. But when we slow down a little bit, and now in a way, I suppose that we have had plenty of time to slow down in the last couple of months with this pandemic. And rather than feeling down and uncertain and afraid, we could use this time to become more aware of the reality of our body, feelings, and mind. So the mind is something, when we say mindfulness, well, in the first place, what is the mind? Where is the mind? Is the mind the same as the brain? The neuroscientists nowadays are saying, no, the mind is a different thing from the brain. Maybe the brain and the mind, they work together, but the mind, well, where it is, it's not in the brain, but where is it? Well, we haven't really come up with the final answer. But mind is something that works together with our body. So therefore, we say we have a body and mind going together, and that is our being. So anyway, the mind also exists of thoughts, but also of feelings, also of intentions, very important part of the mind. Now, even the Buddha said this is one of the most important parts. That is the intention with which you do something. That makes actually the karma. Karma being intentional action. Intention means you have a certain idea behind you in your mind, and you want to do something, and then you do it, and that creates a certain karma and leads to a certain result of that karma. So if the intention is, let's say, evil or no good, like you do things with greed or hatred, jealousy, and things like that, then your karma will be no good. It will be leading to your own and other people's suffering. So that is creating unskillful actions and therefore unskillful karma and leading to for yourself, basically suffering for yourself and others. So if you do things with a good mind, let's say positive mind, based on generosity, loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom, then your activities will be good. They will be skillful. They will be good for yourself, and they'll be good for others as well. And then you create good karma, and you create happiness for yourself and others. So actually, the Buddha, after his enlightenment, when he had got his enlightenment in Bodh Gaya, in the modern Bihar, and when he had given his first speech to his 5 ascetic friends with whom he had been meditating and doing ascetic practices for 6 years, from the age of 29 to the age of 35, and the Buddha actually then attained enlightenment at the age of 35 in Bodh Gaya. He went to teach his friends who were then residing in in Varanasi at the deer park in Sarnath. And after that speech to them, the Buddha went back to his own palace in Kapilavastu, which is nowadays sort of at the border of Nepal. So India and Nepal border, the palace of the Buddha, Kapilavastu. He found his own little son had grown up to the age of 7 now, and he gave advice. It's called Rahula Vada Sutta. The boy's name was Rahula, and this Ovada means an advice. And that advice, even though it was to a 7-year-old, it can be also accepted by, because it's very universal, elderly people. Namely, what did the Buddha say? Rahula, son, before you say something and before you do something, just briefly consider what you're going to say or do is going to be bad for the other person or hurtful to the other person and or yourself. And if it is painful and hurtful and bad to the other person and yourself, don't say it, don't do it. If it's going to be hurtful to the other person, but only good to yourself, refrain from that activity. Don't say so, don't do so. If it's going to be good for the other person and yourself, well, of course, go ahead, do it or say it. And if it's going to be good for the other person, but maybe a little difficult for yourself, you can still consider to do it as a help towards the other person. Now, this teaching actually sums up a lot of what is called sila, or teachings of what you call ethics towards people. Very many religions have ethics as kind of, you should not do this, you should not do that. But this is more or less based on reason and easy to understand, and it covers most of the ethical rules and regulations in most of the religions. So therefore, this Rahula Sutta, the teachings to his little son Rahula, are really good for anybody and everybody. To say it, to pronounce it in words, takes about a minute or 2. But if you just take a deep breath and you think, is this going to be bad for the other person? That's enough to realize whether you should do it or say it or not. If it's bad for the other person, stop, don't do it. It can actually prevent a lot of problems, can prevent a lot of suffering. So this mindfulness, um, of body, feelings, and mind. If one is mindful of our own state of mind, here we have twice the word mind, mindful and mind. In the first place, I forgot to mention to you, but I'm sure that all of you know, that mindfulness is not the same as a mind full of things. But I'm sure you knew that already. So mindfulness actually is paying a lot of attention, awareness, using your awareness, attention to become aware of what is. So if you are paying attention to your mind, then you will probably see one thing is that the mind doesn't want to stay in one place. People sometimes have the feeling or the idea that practicing meditation means that you should be able to keep your attention on one object, stay with it all the time, and that the mind should be empty. But if you go to meditate with that kind of preconception or that idea, you will find that you get very disappointed because it just doesn't happen. Most of the time, the mind is and was and has been jumping here and there and everywhere. Jumping to the past, jumping to the so-called future. And very seldom it is just staying in the present. Well, the reason for that we may come to a little bit later, but it's the fact that our minds are usually not right here and now. The mind is basically thinking about the past and the so-called future, and not really aware of the present moment. If we become aware of the fact that your mind is going here and there, that is one thing to bring it already closer to the present. But then if you're going to condemn this, say, oh, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking? I shouldn't be thinking. What fool I am that I'm thinking this. Now, then that will not stop your mind from thinking. It will actually become worse. So if you are able to pinpoint the fact that you're thinking, maybe by using what is called a labeling technique, to say thinking, 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 the most neutral word for what is happening, without liking it or disliking it, just thinking, thinking, thinking. Then you notice that if you keep your attention on that for a little while, that these thoughts will probably peter out. They will not come in such numbers and in such strength, but rather because you have taken away the fuel under the fire, they may just become softer and softer and leave you. Then, of course, maybe another thought or a train of thoughts will come. But if we can just notice that, maybe just use that labeling technique to get to know that, hey, we are thinking, and then perhaps bring our mind to something in the present moment. Maybe it's a lack of attention to what is. For instance, I'm sitting here. If that's the case, that you're sitting there and you're feeling that you're sitting there, you put your attention on the feeling of the body sitting here, then perhaps your mind may not go here and there and everywhere. That's just a simple example. You may, as engineers and as technical engineers, also have much more important things on your mind than just to go back to the feeling of your body sitting here. Maybe you have to solve problems about the construction of a house or a bridge or whatever you're doing. But there are certain things one thing I learned from J. Krishnamurti, the famous philosopher, whom I have actually listened to quite a few times in Adyar, and also in other parts of the world. He had a very good and simple description of thoughts, thoughts about past and thoughts about future. Namely, the past can be divided into what is called the technical past and the psychological past. Now, the technical past means all the thoughts and the knowledge that you have to have about your subject. You are an engineer, so you have to know your engineering. Or if you're a doctor, you have to know your medicine. If you're a housewife, you have to know what to do. So those kind of thoughts are not a problem, except if you can't remember the things, of course, then it becomes a problem. But still, when you need these thoughts about the technical past, your basic technical knowledge, then you use them. But if your mind is not in the present, and then you cannot also get to those thoughts very well if they're playing up by, for instance, psychological thoughts, such as, oh, she did that to me, he said that to me, and I could have done this, I should have done that, why didn't I, or why did she or he do that? If you're thinking like that, then a lot of energy is being used up by those unnecessary, psychologically burdened thoughts. And that actually takes you away from the simple present moment. So you may not even remember something that you need because of these psychologically burdened thoughts. Similarly, about the future, you can say there is a technical future and there is a psychological future. If you want to do anything, also as an engineer, in the future, you have to have a plan, you have to know what to do, etc., and work towards the goal. And you need all the knowledge from the past for that, and you have to plan that technically for the future. So that should not be a problem. But sometimes we use our psychological thinking based on hopes and fears. We hope that everything will be all right, but we fear that maybe it will not be, or what will people say about it, or what will so-and-so think about this? Well, if you are thinking like that, then also you have a lot of burden on your mind, which doesn't help anybody. So that psychological futuristic thoughts also becomes a burden. And if you can let go of that, again, you create more room, like you are cleaning up some unnecessary files in your computer so that it runs better in the present moment. And then you can be aware more in the present moment. So you can either, do your work better, or you can, if you are sitting down for meditation, also have your mind more in the present. So all these things will help you to become more light in the present and more efficient also. And as Ram Kumar mentioned at the beginning, maybe also lower your blood pressure and your capabilities and so many good things that you don't have if you waste your energy on these psychological burdens from the past and the future. So yeah, if we look at the other things, not only the mind itself, but also the characteristics of all the things that we encounter. Things that we encounter means our own bodily things, feelings, then mind and mind objects. Not only that, but also in the external world, all the things that we are seeing and hearing, smelling and tasting, touching and thinking about, all that, if we can see the things as they really are, which I already mentioned earlier, namely that everything is in a flux, it's changing, it's never the same. Other thing that all those things that are changing cannot be giving permanent happiness. So we shouldn't be looking for permanent happiness in those worldly things. Not that they don't give happiness at all, but that is also an impermanent happiness, limited happiness, based on pleasant things to see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and think. So, and if we think that all this really is me, mine, myself, and my own, then we are fooling ourselves. There's nothing really, if we really look at it, that is me, mine, and my own. I just try to give an example of the non-self nature, even in what is called science, physics. If you look, for instance, at a diamond is considered very valuable, very hard, and very difficult to cut. You need to have another diamond to cut one other diamond. So, but if you would put the diamond under a microscope, especially an electronic microscope, and you go into the diamond, looking into the diamond deeper and deeper and deeper, then you start seeing that there's a lot of space. And then there's some little parts which are twirling against each other, the electrons and the protons, whatever it is, that inside the matter, it becomes bigger and bigger the closer you look at it. And then you see there's actually a lot of space in between these particles. And if you come closer and closer and deeper, then you find that subatomically, there is not really any matter, but there is only energy. So where's the diamond? So the ultimate nature of the diamond is that there's no diamond, which doesn't mean that the diamond has disappeared because if you come back to the sort of day-to-day level of existence, then yes, the diamond is back here, and it probably will be very valuable also. So you can actually save it up for a rainy day, so to speak. But still, it shows you there are different levels of existence, different levels of awareness, and different levels of reality. So some of it is what we call the absolute reality, where there's no diamond and no self, and the relative reality, where the diamond is back and I'm back, but with another kind of understanding, maybe a deeper understanding of what is. Let me see now. We have been going on for about 3/4 of an hour. Would it be a good idea, Ram Kumar, that if you have some questions that you think people would ask, or if some people have already asked, would you mind to put them, please? And we get your picture also. Maybe we can see you as well. So on the video camera. Enable video.
Yes, we have received a number of questions and from our friends, and I will just ask you a few of them. Can I ask you, sir?
Yes, please do.
Yes. One second. There is a question which says, what is the difference between mindfulness, mindlessness, and meditation?
What is the difference between mindfulness, mindlessness, and meditation?
Yes.
Oh, Yes. And you want me to give the answer or try to give
Yes,
the
sir.
answer? All right. Well, mindlessness and mindfulness and meditation, what is the difference? Well, the meaning, I suppose, of mindlessness is when you do something completely without awareness and your body and mind are just in what is called this free run mode without any kind of intention or without any kind of awareness. You just do things without any kind of mm, sympathy or empathy and without knowing what you're doing. That would be mindlessness, not thinking about what you're doing and not about the effects on others, other people, or the environment, for instance. Whereas mindfulness would be the opposite in a way. That is where you are aware of what you are doing, what you are saying, what you are feeling, what you are hearing, and the effects on yourself and on others. So that would be, using your awareness and all that which we mentioned in the Satipatthana Sutta to be aware of all those things. Um, and yeah, then the question is, what is then meditation? Does it have anything to do with either of those? Well, I would say that mindlessness has nothing to do with meditation, except that is a lack of meditation, no meditation. And mindfulness, unless you have your mind full of things, but no, we don't mean that, do we? We mean with mindfulness the awareness. Be aware of what you're doing, what you're saying, what you're experiencing. Yes, that has everything to do with meditation, and it can be done in what is called the formal four postures, basically sitting, standing, walking, and lying down. But you can also apply it in daily life by being aware of what you're doing from moment to moment, also like cooking and cleaning and whatever you may be doing, that is then mindfulness, and it is a kind of informal or applied awareness meditation.
Thank you, sir. And another question we have received is, what is the difference between knowledge and wisdom?
The difference between knowledge and wisdom. I'm just repeating the question so that my friends on the Facebook can also hear it. Well, knowledge, um, is sometimes confused with wisdom, whereas knowledge, as far as I know, is an accumulation of things that you could learn and know by listening and by seeing and by, reading from the books, basically, and from the teachers. Then you are accumulating what is called knowledge. And that can be technical knowledge, it can be knowledge about the world also. For instance, you can read books about traveling to different countries in the world, but you've never been there. Which doesn't mean that when you travel to other countries that you change the knowledge into wisdom. That is not necessarily automatically so, but at least you get a first-hand knowledge. Now the other one would be second-hand knowledge. You read about it. The other one would be first-hand knowledge about other countries when you do travel and you've been there, you've met the people, you've tasted the food, you know the climate and all that. So that is like a higher stage of knowledge, but still it's not wisdom, because wisdom is supposed to give us insight. Wisdom is a kind of knowledge, you could say. It's not the same as knowledge. It is a deeper level, namely to see the things as they really are through reflection, through meditation, through realization of all the things that we've been talking about before. When you get this yourself, then it's not somebody else's knowledge, it's not from the books, but it is from your own experience, basically, an inner realization.
Thank you, sir. Another last question is there a connect between Buddha's teachings and mindfulness?
Well, yes, definitely. Mindfulness is actually one of the main core teachings of the Buddha in his teaching on the development of mindfulness, which I've mentioned as the Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the development of sati or mindfulness. So mindfulness, not a mindful of things, but awareness. So that mindfulness and the development of that is actually has been taught by the Buddha, and therefore we can say there may have been other teachers in different religions having taught that also, but as Buddhists, we think that maybe the Buddha was the first to teach it in such a systematic way on being aware of body, feelings, mind, and the characteristics, and to see the change and the unsatisfactoriness and the non-self nature, and as a way to liberate yourself from ignorance, avidya, and therefore also of the causes of suffering, and attain moksha and basically realization and liberation or nirvana.
Thank you, Venerable Olande, for giving all of us an awesome talk on mindfulness. In today's jet set age, we have missed a lot of things because of speed. We don't know whether we are coming or going. Through your talk today, you reinforced us to be mindful of whatever we do and connect us to the real self and be in the present. Thank you very much, sir.
And one thing I would like to add is, there have been different schools of Buddhism. And in the history of Buddhism, there was one school called Yogacara school. That's around the 3rd century AD, I think. And that was called the mind-only school of Buddhism. It says that mind is the only reality and matter is just an illusion. But then I said, hey, wait a minute. If you walk into a wall and you bump your head, you get a certain sense of reality, isn't it? Boom. And so I said, well, mind is mind, matter is matter, mind is not matter, and matter is not mind. Mind does not matter, and matter does not mind. So never mind, it doesn't matter.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. And thank you all friends for joining us today. And we will have Mr. Tim Boyd, President of the Theosophical Society, come and deliver one of these days. Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.
The session is closed.